Christ, oh lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christ and false prophets shall arise, and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the chosen.
But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things.
But in those days, after that affliction, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his chosen from the four winds, from the uttermost.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. This guy purports to be a reader and a speaker. All right, so let's begin. Chapter 3, we've read it before. Let's read it again. That's what it means to practice religion. At least for me it does. Well, there's more to it than that, but that's what the word means to me anyways. So when people call me religious, I say, yes, I am. But true religion is to remember the poor, the people who are hurting, and not just look after yourself. You know, sitting in a tower reading is wonderful, as long as people aren't screaming all around you. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Forgive me, we'll start over here. And I didn't switch into my reading glasses. Which I was like, why is this so hard to read? I believe I am sitting far enough back. And this is not the right arm. Found it. Okay, I need some fresh tape, but hey. This will serve. I'm getting a brand new pair of glasses real soon. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning, and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, so do these also resist the truth, men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith. But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. That's right. My thing's a little too wide. There's a line I can see, but you can't see. I want to make sure I don't read stuff that's off the screen. But thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity, patience, persecutions, afflictions, which came to me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra, what persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. And that from a child hast thou known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but will after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry, for I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark, and bring him with thee, for he is profitable unto me for the ministry. And Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus. The cloak I left at Troas with Carpus when thou comest, bring with thee, and books, but especially the parchments. And I'm going to stop there because we're not going to finish it today. We're not going to get through this list. If we're lucky, we'll get through the list. And his departing greetings, I was not as interested as his therefore to his exhortation, which followed this big buildup. And we got through that part. That part that, the chapter division does not really, this is kind of an unfortunate chapter division. Because honestly, for evenness sakes, I'm sure there's some good reason there. Let's look at interesting verses. But basically, honestly, this is where the fourth chapter should begin. I mean, just in my book. I mean, hey, what do I know? I'm the guy who did it is apparently a genius, right? So, but all my life I've been, not all my life, but all my time I've been studying the scriptures, I've been adjusting things. I've never felt like I shouldn't be able to do that, since it's all a translation and it's an interpretation. There are limits. We have to be reasonable. Chapter divisions are totally up for debate, though. I mean, you may have good reasons to not change it. That's fine. I'm just saying. Yeah, it makes a long chapter 3, but he didn't finish his thought at verse 17. So. And for the Bible, a 25-verse chapter is not a long chapter. In fact, wasn't chapter 2 26 verses? So, honestly, for me, that would make more sense. Yeah. And they're all, the first 3 are basically all interlinked. There's really 2 chapters. The whole part where he's talking to Timothy. There's really an introduction, then there's the exhortation, and then there's the end. So this is a really full chapter full of a lot of warnings and just so many things that just spark the imagination. And not in a way that, and I mean that in the sense of like, wow, this reminds, do I see signs of these things happening in this world today? Of course. Now, how does he know this? Well, because the Bible's written over many centuries, and it has all these examples of what happens, when society gets ungodly and it gets out of control. And the last days are going to be the worst of that. So all you have to do is extrapolate the pattern. The pattern you see in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, though, in the book of Revelation especially, but in the example of Jesus' life, it's not going to be different at the end. The established religion is always going to be a problem because they are antithetical to what's right with God. And it's just the way it is for the most part. Not that you can't have some sort of organization around your religion, but the heavier it is, more top heavy it is, the more corrupt it is, period. That doesn't work any other way. The bigger things get, it's just like the Tower of Babel. The communication ceases. People get confused. God doesn't make the world to work that way. The world does not work the way men want it to work, where they get to just do whatever they want. When we start building these huge systems, they fall apart. Empires collapse. That's the way the world works. Good luck, humans. You cannot defy this. Not by doing evil. Now, by following God, you can escape the cycles of history. By doing good and right, by that is a road forward where we don't have to suffer these things. It says that too. We don't have to be suffering all the time from wars and death and destruction. But men never learn. So there's always a last time for everything. Everything has its end. Everything has its collapse. I don't know, the world itself and America. Now, I don't know if this is the collapse of the world, but for me, it's my world because America's collapsing. Or it's on the way. It's like they're doing everything in their power. It's like a lot like the Titanic. Everyone's like, "Well, it's not collapsing. We're still sinking. I mean, we're still swimming. We're still floating. We're not in the water. No, we're not in the water. We're not all going to die either. We should not all sleep. We shall be changed. No matter what happens, we're going to be changed. Just like history. If we're going through history, there's going to be dynamic changes, and they will be difficult and hard, and it will change everything. And it's going to cause great discomfort, and it's good to be mentally prepared. And in fact, being a Christian and being prepared for the end of the world in general makes one also prepared for other scenarios. I think it's good to keep a clear head to understand that this may not be the actual apocalypse. You can have things that are apocalyptic. Like during World War II, a lot of people thought that was the end of the world. It was very apocalyptic. I mean, Hitler's invasion of Russia, and a lot of that stuff was meant to usher in like this utopian age. All this, and even today, it's all in the name of spreading democracy and freedom and pornography. And that's what we're about. You need to open up so we can bring all our smut into your country. We got that in abundance. I'll tell you, we don't. They say we don't manufacture anything in America. I'll tell you, we manufacture pornography. And we manufacture a lot of pornography. Men should be lovers of their own selves. Not that that's a segue into that actual one. But in the last days, perilous times will come. I'll tell you what, even if you're not in the last days, perilous times are going to come. There is no end of history. There is no utopian dream of, unless the best we can do is to follow the dictates of heaven. And live peaceably among ourselves and love one another as treat your neighbor as you would want to be treated. Then we can have peace. But since men don't do that and never will, I mean, some of us will, and the degree to which we insist on that, we can make the world a better place because it doesn't take a whole lot. 10 righteous men can save a city, okay? And they won't even thank them for it, but hey. Men shall be lovers of their own selves. Instead of being lovers of their country and lovers of their families and lovers of the things, they're mostly concerned with themselves. And I've seen this pointedly. And I haven't been critical. I've watched things like they call it MGTOW, M-G-T-O-W, men going their own way. And I haven't been critical of them. Obviously, you've never heard me speak of it. I am a patriarch. I'm like a relic of the past. They don't, for them, they're complaining about a system that doesn't affect me. Like I have a wife who is loyal and would never leave me. I wouldn't let her leave. And some people be offended that I say that. She loves that I say that. I'd never let you go. I'd never let you go. You kidding me? You'll never get away from me, baby. And someone go, ooh, ew, ew. It's like, I don't know. I think they're full of it. They say that, but it's like, women want a man that'll hold them close, okay? Anyone who says otherwise is lying, or she has some issues. She may have issues. If a woman's been abused by a man, I can see why she wouldn't want a man holding her. Gee. Far be it. I also enjoy for her to like being held. So it's not like she's kicking and screaming to get away. Right? But I love her. Husbands, love your wives. She'll never leave me. But men are going their own way. What does that mean? They're deciding, hey, I'm not going to get a wife. Screw that. I'm just going to live for myself. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to make money for me, buy the stuff I like, do fun things I enjoy, maybe have a girlfriend, but not involved, not let her in on my stuff, not her get close enough where she can marry me and then own half of, and have the potential to take all that I've earned. And so they refuse marriage, and some even are voluntarily celibate, though others are not. Others are like, no, I'll have a girlfriend. I'm just not going to marry her ever. And that attitude prevails. It doesn't prevail, but among those people who are, and it's a movement of people who are thinking about that, just like the people who are, they call them incels. Incels are another problem. I don't talk about them, and that's involuntarily celibate people. But also they have an issue because the main issue is like they're all lusting after beautiful women because they're addicted to pornography. But they like when I was young, I wanted the pretty girls to like me, but they didn't. I wasn't attractive. I had to change myself. And even then, I realized, those really, really pretty girls at all, the ones that are hot and know it, they're terrible wives. Horrible. A lot of women make terrible wives. You have to weed them out. Not all guys are dreamy husbands either, ladies. So, especially when they're a lover of their own selves. You have to have a man to raise a family has to be willing to make sacrifice. A patriarch is, I am the lord of the family, but I'm also the chief servant. It's like, and all the burdens on my shoulder. I come from an Italian family, and we always have strong patriarchal structure. It was always like my great-grandfather. My grandfather died, which was sort of like, I don't know. Well, it was, as a child, it affected me greatly. But anyways, men are to love their wives so that the wives can love the children. I love my children too, of course. I don't love them as well as she does. I love them in my own way, I guess. I don't know if I love them as well. I love them differently. I helped instruct her a lot on discipline, because good discipline, a wife does not really discipline very well by instinct. But by instruction, they can be very good at it. Just like a man by instinct may not be very good at affection and other things. But a wife could perhaps instruct him, though my wife has never been able to really instruct me on that one. But, well, she's tried. I'm just a tough student. So, but even so, loving yourself is not about necessarily hugs and kisses, though that's a nice thing. It's also about how you look after people. Like I always raised my children for their own good. I was always trying to do good for them to raise, so that, and what does that good represent, I guess? Well, I didn't want other people to dislike them, and I didn't want to dislike them. So in a certain way, weirdly, I used to say it in a sort of selfish way. I was like, I don't want to live with a bunch of kids I can't stand. That's what I said. And I did, because I can't say when I was young, I understood this the way I do now that I'm older. So I did by instinct something which was good, which was I didn't let my kids do annoying things. I would reprimand them. They would get negative feedback from me. I'd speak, if they were behaving in an annoying fashion, I would go, hey, cut that out, and like, that wasn't a spankable offense, but since they knew I could spank them for doing really bad stuff, and if I started getting, for example, defying me when I tell you to stop something, if you do that enough, you're going to get a spanking. I told you I need you to do this. You're not going to get a spanking for doing the thing, but you'll get a spanking for not stopping when you're told. And the thing is, I wanted their lives to be good. And if they're well-disciplined people, other people like them. And this is the way it turned out. Other people tend to like them. And they get more opportunities in life. They make friends easier. They get along with people better at work. They get along better with their siblings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's good for them. And later on, I even heard people like Jordan Peterson saying, like, never let your children do something that makes you not like them. And I was like, that's what I've been doing for a long time. That's right. So there was a thing. I'm like, I get it. To me, it seems obvious. I always see these parents putting up with kids that are terrible. Like, why are you letting your children be awful? Don't you love them? Why do you want to hate? And the parents seem like they genuinely hate their kids. Like, I can't stand these kids. Shut up when you get home. Wait till I get you home. It's like, what is going on? Wait till I get you home. I don't want to go home with you, lady. It's like, okay. We have to look out for the well-being of others, starting with those who are closest to your family. You must look out for their well-being. If you don't take care of your family, you've denied the faith, and you're worse than an infidel, according to the Apostle Paul. And because, how could that possibly be? Wait a second. I believe in Jesus. All I have to do is believe in Jesus. I can screw around on my wife and abandon my family, and I still love Jesus. What's that got to do with it? Doesn't his blood pay for all sins? Yes, it does. Isn't once saved, always saved? Well, if you have that attitude, I'm pretty sure you never put your faith in Christ because you don't know who he is. And I guarantee he don't know who you are. Because if you were one of his disciples, you wouldn't do that. And you wouldn't have that attitude. His disciples are a little wiser than that. I know. Because I've known the Lord a long time. And he certainly knows who I am. And that's just, to me, I'm just the least of his servants. He knows me. I'm like, oh, there's Paul. Lovers of their own selves. Covetous. We're, love God. Think about that. How many commandments? They're loving yourself. You don't love God. You don't love your neighbor as yourself. But primary focus, myself. And that is it is the Geist, as they say. The gist, the ghost. All three of those English words, ghost, gist, and geyser, come from the German word Geist. I didn't know that. And then the German word Geist means all three. A fountain, a source, a spirit, a synapsis. I think that's very interesting. I only recently learned that. I'm always learning. And I've come to the knowledge of the truth, and that's the Lord Jesus. But anyways, the lovers of their own selves, and also the Lord Jesus and following him. It's not just claiming him as a brand. It's like, no. I need to do what he taught us to do. If I believe in him, well, then of course I'm going to do what he said to do. If I don't do what he said to do, then I must not believe in him. Because he said I should do stuff, and I claimed that I thought he was God even. God even. He's God even. But I don't know. God said I should do some stuff. Nah. I'm going to do what I want to do. Sounds wise, right? No. Okay. Lovers of yourselves. Well, when you love yourself, it's no surprise you end up covetous. Because loving of yourself leads to that, I need to have more. More stuff. I admit I have a lot of stuff. A lot of it kind of just falls on me. And a lot of it's junk. There's a lot of papers behind me because I've done a lot of writing of music and stuff. In fact, the number one thing I think I have around me is paper and books. Yeah. Knowledge. I got to look it up at a bunch of nature DVDs. I can't play more because I have a DVD player somewhere. But now it's like I've watched them all, and now I got so much more to take in. Because there's so much more. I'm not a collector of knickknacks. I've got a few, and family heirlooms, nothing much. And but sometimes people want to have. I was watching the other day. There was a sweepstakes on YouTube for that company that makes wallets. It's funny. Every time I want to think of them, I think of the other company that makes wallets. And out of respect for them, I will not mention either company. Because I don't want to mention the wrong one, and the other one's giving away a car. And they're giving away two. Well, one, you get your choice of a Lamborghini or a souped-up truck. I think you can actually take cash, which is what I'd do. Because I'd be like, As soon as that Lamborghini broke down, I wouldn't be able to fix it. It would be a brick to me. I'd have to sell it probably for a very reduced amount. And truck, I don't know. I don't like the idea of twin turbos. It doesn't sound like it's going to last very long from what I hear. So, and then buy a sensible car and then do something, probably try to get myself out of debt and then start helping other people. You got to dig yourself out of the hole. It's hard to help others. You got to set your own house in order. Working on it. I discovered I was swindled more than I realized, which is actually good, I think, for my legal case eventually when it comes about. So that's got me thinking positive thoughts on that front, because it's like, wow, I really got that will impress a judge. That will make an impression on a judge. And that makes me feel good, because it's not just like I said this and that. No, I have hard concrete proof now. So that's awesome. But that's because the covetous of men, they want to take things from others. So they do. That's why that's why we're at war. I mean, we're not technically at war, and we're not at war, but all our proxies are at war. Israel's at war, Ukraine's at war, and they want us to be at war because they want to take the stuff that other people possess. They don't want them to have a cohesive government that can protect them from looting, and they want to go in there and take oil, and whatever other resources they can get. Ukraine has a lot of resources, and it's a fight over those resources and control of them. But not an unprovoked fight, that's for sure. All right, covetous boasters. Well, and I was going to say the whole world is like capitalism. The one issue with it is basically it's like this glorification of covetousness. It's like try to make more and more money. And I'm all for a free market, but I'm not a big fan of capitalism, which is where you take money and you put people into debt to you and all, and you don't actually do the work. You just, people amass lots of money, and they say, and it does make a lot of money, but it does other things too. Making a lot of money isn't the only goal, and should not be the only goal of society. Should not, since the pursuit of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Now, some of those evils are more benign than others, meaning just the actual, pursuit. A lawful pursuit of wealth is a benign activity. But within that lawful zone, it can still be unhealthy. Because people will, people who want to be rich, it's never enough. They're never satisfied. Like, I could be satisfied. I could get rid of my debts and pay off my mortgage and all that. And as long as I have wheels and stuff, I don't need anything like money. As long as I have enough to cover medical expenses or help out a family member when they need it, other than, see, now that gets into where I've been hearing people talk about how the Calvinists thought, the early Calvin, I don't know how they feel today, but they thought making money, it's my duty to make money. And I felt like this too at times. I thought maybe I should have made more money somehow. And I'm trying to actually do that in some ways, of course, because you always got to, since I don't have enough money, I want to earn more money. So I'm working on that. But because they wanted to get rich so they could do more good, so they could further God's kingdom. And they're becoming powerful to do that. And, it is good to be in a position of strength. But that's not always true. It's like a very one-sided view. Because it can lead to this covetousness. And the West has succumbed to that covetousness. And not because of religious fervor, but because of the natural thing. That just human beings are, it's like, there's something about that gathering of wealth that becomes addictive. And that you think like at the end of it all, there's going to be some sort of pleasure and payoff. But right now, I just got to endure work my tail off to get there. Boasters. Now, we've always had these qualities. But again, they tend to ramp up because as society breaks down, people start violating more and more social taboos. Like it's considered, you shouldn't be a boaster, bragging. But now, bragging, there's a lot of bragging. Someone, I didn't see your comment about that, about who will reap the benefits of, but go ahead. But boasters, yeah. No, I mean, they'll make their boast of such foolish things. Like it says in the Bible, men that are mighty to drink wine. I literally was like that. I could drink a lot. I'm a big guy, and I would drink a lot. And, I would enjoy watching other people be like, no, I can't, no more. And I'm like, well, drink them under the table. 401k benefactors, so children, grandchildren, investors, yeah. Yeah, they reap the benefit. The system is corrupt because a lot of people do reap the benefits with their 401ks. I don't have a 401k. I'm glad in a sense because I don't want to reap their corporate profits. There's something dirty about it, and the market is valued at twice what the whole value of the economy is. So that can't possibly be sustainable. The whole thing is going to come. Well, we agree. The cycles of history are not going to be defined. God didn't make the world in such a way for man that he can just defy the way God has made the world. He made the world a certain way. And you try to build your Tower of Babel, it's going to fail. God will not allow it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the companies go on. It's almost like a nobility structure, the executive structure. Yeah, right. The currency sort of benefits, but overall, right, it resounds down the road. Pride is huge in our world today. They boast in their pride. I mean, we have a whole month for pride. Could it be any more indicative? I mean, it could. We could have years of, we could have a double Pride Month. I mean, it could get worse. In some ways, with the Trump administration, it has abated somewhat because of the transsexual people being somewhat quieted from their invasion of female spaces and all that. And I don't think that's Proud Paul's talking about is really talking about that, though that's part of it. It's like, proud of things you should be ashamed of. Trying to tell people it's wrong to feel ashamed of being, all you left behind was the name. Yep. Yeah, but they're proud of all kinds of like, I don't want to be ashamed of being fat. Don't fat shame me. It's like, whenever I get too overweight, I get embarrassed. I remember at one point in my life, I was almost 300 pounds. And I was like, and I was like, I saw that 190, I hit 190 something. And I'm like, I don't want to see 300 pounds. So I stopped eating fast food. That was all I did. And I got down to 250 in a couple months. From the time being, it's going to shift far right and far left every term. The pendulum swings further each year. I could see that because it goes extreme. It's just going to go. Well, because they're going to tend to elect far left candidates because they're going to. I mean, maybe it depends. I mean, like people would want a guy like Bernie Sanders, okay, but where is the next Bernie Sanders? Because the current one is too much of a wimp to ever seize power, and they'll never let him on the Democrat side. Or will they? Maybe they'll change their ways and start having elections on that side because they've gone off the deep end as far as I'm concerned. The Republicans, at least they're all straight-laced and stuffy, so they can't rig their elections. Apparently, they won't. So Trump ends up keeps getting nominated, and they don't want him, but they'll use him, and he's somehow not alert enough, is what I call it, to understand what's going on entirely around him. There's too much. He doesn't understand. He doesn't have the breadth of knowledge, and he's less of a wrecking ball than I'd want him to be. He's trying to listen to people and tell him, "Oh, do your legacy and all that stuff." It's all just jacked up, and I don't know. Yeah, it's probably going to go left after this one. Maybe depends on who they offer, but I would not be surprised if it goes, elections swinging this way and that way, and the problem is I don't know about far left and far right. The whole system of understanding to me is, it's going from like party to party, but in the end, the results are the same, except there's a few issues which they use to agitate the people and divide them over, which we have divisions over, like, the transsexual issues and stuff. Some people are like, oh, that's all wonderful. It's like a lot of other people are like, And then abortion, there's a lot of people on the Democrat side, they're all crazy about that. But they still have abortion. We didn't get rid of it. He just overthrew Roe versus Wade, which is something they used to talk. A lot of people did talk about doing because it was bad law. And now we have a more constitutional system where we have different states deciding how they want to kill their children. But they can still do it. We didn't outlaw abortion. He just overturned Roe versus Wade. But that does rile some people up, and it keeps people divided. And you'd think there'd be a majority solution that people could get along on. I mean, I don't. To me, conception is not the beginning of life. It's where a unique human being comes into existence. The sperm and the egg are alive. There's no, creation of new life. It's like a new human exists in the zygote. That is a unique combination of DNA that can only happen once. Well, it could happen with a twin, or maybe it's so rare. It's like the possibilities of that one unique person coming into existence are just immense improbability that any one of us would be born. But here we are. Men are proud and they glory in their pride. It's a virtue to be proud. And I don't count it like this. Now, here's a point about pride I've talked about before, where it's like, okay, but what about they always encourage people to show pride in their work. That's almost like a hyperbolic use of the word pride. Show that you care. What you do with your might. Do it as unto the Lord, not with eye service, not with lip service, but with your whole heart. And I'm definitely in favor of that. And that's the equivalent of when they say take pride in your work. And I think of it more like the feeling I get when I look at my children. My children are like my work. And when they're doing well and stuff, I have a good feeling in me. It lifts me, but I don't allow it to make me think. It doesn't occur to me to make me think like I'm so wonderful. I just feel so pleased that the results are so good, that they turned out the way I wanted them to turn out. And so I would say like, if I would believe in pride, it would make me proud. But it's just that positive feeling you get when you see you've done well. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What's bad is when you allow that to lift you up and think, I'm something. I'm something. And that's the way people today think. I'm something. I'm so important. I'm the center of everything. My mind, soul has tasted bitterness, thankful for what we do have, and crying internally for everyone in the East. Yes. Innocent lives in harsh conditions now viewable thanks to technology. Well, I'm watching my father die, and it reminds me of the people dying of starvation in Gaza because he looks like he's starving and he's having trouble eating. And it hits me hard. Yeah, very much. There, very personally, because it's like I see what suffering looks like. I don't want my father to suffer. And I think of all the people who are suffering. It's terrible. And it's being paid for by our country. And it's being sponsored and protected and lifted up. And if it weren't for us in the United Nations long ago, they would have put a stop to it long ago. We've stood in the way. I've only learned this. Like I said, they did a March of Return back in 2014 where it was peaceful. And they got shot up and wounded and some of them killed and everything. Yeah, now we see it better. Back then it was like somehow it didn't get out. This time, even though I'm seeing a lot less, but I know what's going on. Blasphemers. There's a lot of ways you can blaspheme God. There's a lot of ways. And the Lord says a lot of them will be forgiven. All the manner of blasphemies which men shall blaspheme, they can be forgiven. Paul, yelling out threats and blasphemies. I think it was one of the things, because he doesn't know Jesus is the Son of God. That's Jesus, the son of Satan, And certainly people blaspheme the name of our Lord, very literally. But also, I think a lot of preachers blaspheme the Lord when they lie. And when they say the Lord is this way or the Lord is that way, and he's not that way. Say the Lord wants this or the Lord wants that. The Lord wants us to bless Israel by sending them weapons so they can drive the Palestinians out of their land. Like in some sort of weird, like as if they were Canaanites and this was, the 12th century BC or whatever. No. They're not. They're a God-fearing people. They're a lot more like the Samaritans, honestly. I've met some Arabs. They're very nice people. A lot of them are just like white people. They're just average people who have religion who are not very serious about it. I mean, they're serious about it in the way they live their lives, but they're not like all like waving their Qurans and shouting jihad. But I'll tell you what, if a foreign country came into my neighborhood and started roughing us up, my neighbors, a lot of them would be waving their Bible around talking about holy war. And the Bible doesn't even really talk about any kind of fighting. And they'd have a gun in their other hand. They'd be ready to fight. And I always say, well, Jesus said turn the other cheek. But, the Muslims, it says fight. What's our excuse? Because they have a doctrine of jihad that tells them when to fight. And technically, they're not supposed to hurt Christians. They're supposed to make us pay a tax, whatever, because they think they've got the true religion, whatever. Maybe when they live in our countries, we should charge them a tax back. I don't know. Just let them know. No, we're the true religion. Whatever. Just a tit for tat. I don't want to provoke war with them. It's not. The reason they hate us is because we're in their country. Yeah, they want to spread their religion to the whole world. So do we. Well, they want to do it violently. Well, so did we. I mean, I don't take personal responsibility, but Christians as a whole spread religion, not necessarily the way that Islam did it overtly like that, but they'd come in, ransack countries, and send the missionaries out. I mean, there was violence involved in all of that. I mean, the way we took countries was not like peaceful, like as far as during the age of exploration. It wasn't like this peaceful process. It was a violent process. And yeah, the gospel got preached through it. Okay. I mean, the gospel suffered violence from the beginning, and then the violent take it by force. So, I mean, there's going to be violence involved with it. This is human life. This is, like I said, it's like people want perfection. It's like that's not the point of life right now. Well, I mean, it is to seek perfection, but the world isn't perfect. The plan is perfect, but the world is corrupt. Blasphemers. They speak evil of God. Now people can view what Talmud says about Jesus and how people view him. Yeah, it does say very nasty things about Jesus in the Talmud. Whereas the Muslims, though they're incorrect, I look at like the Samaritans. You know why the Jews hated the Samaritans? Because they didn't get the religion right, and they weren't really Jews, okay? And Muslims. So what's our beef against Muslims? Well, they don't get Christian. They don't get. They claim to believe in Jesus and stuff. They have him as a prophet. They respect him, and they're willing to respect us as long as we demonstrate we're Christians and not pagans. I can see why. I remember even back as far as early for me as 2001, when I was still had my eyes closed on a lot of these issues. I remember thinking, the Muslims, like the Osama bin Laden and them, I could see why they view American Christians as not people of the book, because they're so materialistic and covetous and all the stuff, blasphemous, and their culture is filled with pornography and lewdness, that this is not a Christian people and doesn't deserve to be treated like a people of the book. And I see that's an argument they had. That's, and you don't want to be treated like a pagan under the Islamic system. That's the part of their religion I disagree very strongly with. They shouldn't do that. That's why Hindus really don't like Muslims, because Hindus are not considered a people of the book, and they're not protected like a people of the book. They should have Islam really needs a second prophet to come along and let the Hindus off the hook there, because that's not the way to convert people to your faith. Though it worked with all the idolaters of the Middle East, I guess, right? Hey, that's the thing. The Muslims in the Middle East were idolaters who were converted. And of course, in Christian lands, they were offered convert or die. No, it was not convert or die. Convert or pay the jizya. And for a lot of people, it was more convenient to convert than to pay a tax or anything. And to be like a second-class citizen, have to kind of live in somewhat. I don't know, if you're still in your Christian community, I don't see the point. That's why Christian communities existed within Muslim nations, such as like the Turkish Empire, for centuries, because they weren't generally during the empire, at least, they weren't in the practice of committing genocide on Christians who submitted to their rule, for the most part. It's like I said, when there was war and stuff, that things got dirty on every side. Because men do dirty things. War is what do they say? The sum of all evils. If money's the root, then war is where it all ends up. To the end, wars are determined. Disobedient to parents. That's what I say all the time. I say it goes back to lovers of your own selves. If you love your children, you will teach them to be obedient. With a gentle hand that considers not only, don't provoke your children to wrath. You want to walk a line between strength and gentleness. That's what the essence of meekness is to me. It is to walk that line between restraint and the willingness to use force when it's needed. Especially when you're talking about disciplining a child. When it comes to the world, I always consider the book of Revelation, when it talks about the two witnesses, that they have fire that comes out of their mouths. Our way and our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God. It is the sword of the Lord, and that is the only weapon I will ever wield in rage against the enemy. Like I've said before, I would use a gun for certain things, but I prefer not to shoot at people. Certainly not in a war. It's like there's always a better solution than that. Disobedient to parents. Yeah. Parents have to teach it and all, but sometimes, some would say, well, I do, but they don't listen. It's like, oft times, I don't know, because my brother yesterday was talking to me about something one of our siblings said, and about, oh, your kids, you love them whether they're good or bad. And I was like, well, I don't know if I agree with that. But, I might still love them whether they're good or bad, but I don't treat them the same whether they're good or bad. And also, I would feel somewhat I had failed if my children had gone bad on me. Now, kids can go prodigal, I suppose, but I always believe in the truth of the idea that if you raise a child up in the way they should go, they won't depart from it. If you do a good job, it should be, if you've done it right, they're going to, you know why? Because I think righteousness is its own reward. Living a good life is its own reward. It is a trap. The covetous path, the path of all those evils, doesn't result in happiness. It only results in more greed and more envy, more spite and strife and all the things that make life miserable. Unthankful. Thankfulness has even been studied by scientists that an attitude of gratitude, is nothing to be dismissed. It is actually it does something to you physiologically. When you generally engage in a feeling of thankfulness, just like a lot of other feelings, love. When you feel loved and love others, you tell me that doesn't physiologically affect you? Of course it does. Absolutely. Anyone who's ever felt feelings understands it affects you. This is like sadness. I've felt my heart breaking. It hurts. It hurts. And there's connections there. Thankfulness. But people aren't thankful. They're always discontent. We live in the most wealthy nation in the world, and all we have is complaining. Because people envy one another. While the rich have more. Well, they're all greedy and seeking it. It's like, people, there's a big Powerball thing going on right now. Everyone's buying the Powerballs. I don't buy that. I don't even want the money. Because part of me thinks maybe I should take on the temptation. And I'm like, no, I don't want the temptation. I don't want to have that kind of money. I don't think I'm better than other men. I'd be way too selfish with it. I might not be totally selfish with it, but I'd be pretty selfish with it probably because it's not a lot. Well, no, if it was a lot of money, I guess. Even then, it's like then it becomes a lot of money and you become more selfish. It's like, well, if it's only $1 million, well, that's one thing. That's not a lot of money. It doesn't go very far. I could do somewhat good. I could, maybe drill some wells for people who don't have water or something like that. And then you get like $1 billion, and also you're like, whoa, man, that's, do I really, I only need about 500,000, and I could set myself up for the rest of my life, no problem, and I'd have, and I could take all the rest of that money and do a lot of good with it. But would I? Or would I clutch to it fearfully? I'd like to think not. I don't know. It's one of those things I don't know. I've never had a lot of money. Every time, here's the thing. From what I can tell, every time I get money, I lose it. So if I got $1 billion, I'd be one of those people who instantly just lost it all. And I'd probably just get myself a couple of cars and then donate a lot of money. I'd find out what the best causes were, or maybe just do something myself. I don't know. Thought about it, but not sure how it would help people in the East. Right. Other parts of the world without government intervening. Now, that's why I think it's actually more valuable. I know, that's why I didn't buy a lottery ticket. I don't think that's, what would I do with that? You're right. I could buy, what am I going to do? Send them food? They can't get food. You know, buy them missiles. I get arrested for that. You can't materially support. Well, they're not we're not in a declared war with any of these people. You know, it's a funny thing. Unthankful, unholy. In our generation, they are unholy. They don't glory in holiness. They glory in the opposite. And a lot of elites, in secret societies and stuff, they do unholy things for the purpose of doing unholy things. Because in many, evil versions of religion, people do yeah, but whenever people try to help people in other parts of the world, the government in that part of the world just steals everything. Correct. And it's an issue. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know if money's my main interest is to replace the government of the United States, to dismantle the current regime, to destroy the empire from within. That's my goal. To destroy the empire from within and bring us back to our borders, so that, and hopefully soft land, without World War III, without, and so what do I do for that? Well, I write my Congress people, and I write songs, and I try to get the videos seen. In fact, I'm working on one right now with my brother. We have a channel with 100,000 subscribers where we do like funny videos, but we're doing one called The Human Shields, which is about Palestine and Israel, and about the IDF. And it's just basically, and it's meant to thoroughly drag them through the mud and tar and feather them hard. And then I'm working on one called Death to America, which is about why people are saying Death to America. And I've done a lot of songs, but will that do anything? I don't know. It's all I can do. It's all I have, is whip my sword around. It's, I don't know. I've had viral videos before, not that viral, like a couple million views, but not on this channel, obviously. No, but my Bible videos never go viral. No. Neither do my political songs, but we'll see. Because if you could bring sufficient embarrassment, ridicule, and shame to them, if enough of the American people start seeing this a certain way and getting angry about it, they will be constrained, because they will fear. Because America has a history of revolting at times. We are a revolutionary country, and we've had numerous revolts over the years, including the Civil War. Even the 60s was a kind of a revolt, and another one's coming. And I want to take them down. We can't have, this current government can't continue. It's got to go. And I don't mean Trump. I mean, how you said like about the corporations, the CEO comes and goes, but it stays the same? The government. That's what I mean. Like, doesn't matter who we elect. Until it matters who we elect, it's not a democracy. It's not a proper republic either. The Squid Games protagonist back then, I saw the show 2 years. I never saw it. I heard about it. I don't know the Monsanto. Unthankful, unholy, without natural affection. I see that a lot with the women. They're not naturally, not that they, well, I don't know. I was going to say, well, the fact that they abort their children, it's like seeing, but when a woman touches the child, smells the child, I still think that it's hard for a woman to like not that. And I don't think he's talking about things like women giving up children in surrogacy, though I don't know how desperate a woman must be to do that. It's got to be very difficult, surrogacy. I don't even like the idea. Rich people paying someone to carry a baby for them. That's just like so, you should probably adopt a child at that point. Well, that's often the problem. They want to adopt, but they don't want to wait. They want to do it their way and whatever. Especially opposed to people. I've always said, like, the thing about homosexual adoption is, especially for the men, I think it's a bad idea for the most part. It's a bad risk just because of how much more risky men are. Men are so much more likely to be sexual predators than women. And I definitely trust two women to raise children better than two men. But a child needs a man and a woman. That research has been done. They don't need it, but it's better. You can raise a child with no parents. Oh, they turn out awful. They turn out all messed up in the head. I mean, people can overcome the worst of circumstances. And we have all kinds of examples throughout history of people who overcame, the turmoil of their youth to rise above it. In fact, oftentimes you look at geniuses, they did have very tortured youths, and it's considered to be one of the ingredients to make genius is to have, it's like a lot of things. It's like if you're working with plants, when plants are distressed, they get stronger, and so do people. That's why I like making my kids wrestle, because it makes them stronger. They get distressed, they get pinned down, they go through hard things. It's like someone's trying to beat them up. They gotta learn to fight back. And it makes them into better people, stronger, without making them like you teach them not to be bullied. I make them strong so they can keep peace, right? But they have to be told that. They have to be instructed. What you do with your power is important, and the one who gives the power to the children should also look after and see to it that it's not being misused. Like I had an issue with a fat kid last year. Wanted to quit because when he was going over to the junior high, the kids were picking on him. Saw the episode of The Twilight Zone where the baby Hitler was killed but was replaced by an orphan child who turned out to be the real Hitler later. Oh, so it was like a useless thing. They went back to kill Hitler, but actually then they killed some other kid who ended up being no. Now this orphan is in his place, and he was Hitler anyway, so I suppose in that particular story, it does beg the question. But I said it's interesting that to go back and kill Hitler to prevent things. It's like as if one man is responsible for those historical cycles. I thought it was just going to be, yeah. Well, also I thought they are like he was created by his family situation, or he rose to where he did because someone would. You know what I mean? There was going to be some sort of pressure in Germany to do things. Some people would say if it had been someone other than Hitler, maybe Germany would have conquered the world, because Hitler made a lot of mistakes. There was a movie I watched in high school called How Hitler Lost the War, highlighting all of the errors he made that cost him dearly during the war. It's not that, and so fathers do mold the child, right? Abusive fathers do not make good sons. A father has to be, like I said, from the beginning, I knew I wanted my children to both fear me and adore me. And that's what you want, love and respect. Just like God. God wants to be loved, but he also wants you to understand he is God. And you should not tempt him, because he's willing to treat with you as a son. But like I said, we are not naturally his sons. We are all his children, like the creation, sure. But in that special sense, like Jesus is a son of God, that's something you only get through being a Christian. He gave us power to become the sons of God, where we reign with him. We sit with him in his throne and are crowned with him. Things that are almost too marvelous to speak of. Make you think almost like, I'm getting too high-minded here. Well, if we dwell on it too much, especially while we're still on earth, we must remember our feet are still touching the soil. We have not ascended into the heavens with our Lord yet. So let us remember that is not yet. It is to come. So let us walk worthy of that, though. That's the thing. Walk worthy. And that's the opposites of these things. Without natural affection. You should have the right affection towards your children. You should love them, not be abusive towards them. Mothers and fathers. I don't get it, because I was a very naturally affectionate person, and I don't know if it's just something that gets abused out of people, it's just a cycle of evil. Like, I mean, like if I'd been abused. But the thing is, my mom was a bit abusive. I mean, she was abusive. That's why we don't have a really good. That's not why we have a bad relationship, though, because her abuse was like she smacked us a lot, hit us with spoons and spatulas, tended to be snappy and unreasonable, and sometimes I didn't understand what was going on, whatever. And it's okay. I didn't resent her over it. It was other things I didn't like that she did. That was like the least of it. So it was sort of different. It was like the abuse was on a different level. Anyways, truce breakers. I wonder if that's pretty specific. But anyways, I want to see if we can extend it beyond just a truce. It probably does. Let's see what the word is in Greek. I'm just going to look at it here really quick. I may not bring it up on the screen. Truce breakers is aspondos, which it said without libation. That's interesting. I'm going to bring that up instead because that is an interesting word, and let's look at it because I always find this kind of interesting when they have, the origin of an idea. Someone who breaks an agreement, a contract. It's not just a agreement. It's not just a truce. Sorry, there's a much broader. It's also translated implacable, but which I would. It sounds like a different word. Can't be placated. Can't be. That's different than truce breaking. Irreconcilable is the way they say it here. That's more like implacable in the NASB. But it's from alpha as a negative particle and a derivative of the word that means drink offering. So no drink offering. And the idea is basically that, of course, when you make an agreement, you would take a drink with it as part of the consummation of the covenant or agreement or truce, whatever it happens to be. Whatever, when people come together and they shake hands or they clink glasses and they say, this is what we're going to do, we've agreed on it. And it's saying that people who can't, and I think that our country is a real good example of this, America. I didn't ever ask you, I assumed your English is good. I assumed you were some sort of American, right? I know the other we have listeners that are Americans. I was thinking of myself as preaching to the Americans because they're the ones. Someone asked me, like, what do you have to say to the world? I'm like, there's people over there who have things to say to them. I'm not here to preach to the world what they should do. I'm here to talk to America, my people. Though I love talking with people who aren't Americans, that's fine. As far as what I think about, like, my direction of thought and who needs rebuke. It's like, I don't think people in other countries need me to come tell them about Jesus. I think they've heard about Jesus and they like Jesus, but they don't like us. Okay? They like Jesus, but they don't like us. Because we break truces, we lie, we cheat, we steal. That internationally. And that's the problem. Our country does not, people say, you can't act like a Christian on the international faith. To some degree you can. I know nations make war and all that, but I'm saying, hey, we don't have to be, just because we're the strongest, you can tell, you judge a person by how, not entirely, but you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat their inferiors, those who they see as beneath them or those who are indeed weaker than them. How do they treat them? And when not well, that's we have to have mercy on the weak. We're Christians. I know in the world it's like the idea is like there's someone weak, pound him. He's weak, easy target. Let's have some fun. But a wiser, more mature, godly mindset says no. So English, Portuguese, Arabic, French are pretty good too. Spanish, Romanian, very diverse, polyglot. Oh, you speak a lot of languages. Excellent. That's cool. I wish I could speak other languages. I took a couple. I took Spanish and then I switched to German. I should have stuck with Spanish because I took German under this weird pretense that my mother and I would practice German at home. We didn't practice English at home. She and I did not talk much because I didn't like talking to her. And so I should have stuck with Spanish because it'd be the most useful language for me here in America because we live next to a Spanish-speaking country. I always wished I'd taken some French, too, because French is I don't know how to read it. I learned how to read Spanish, which is very useful. I like that. I can read Italian, Spanish, and German because I know their alphabet and how the languages work, and I'm pretty good at them. As far as I had a gift for pronouncing the words properly. My Spanish teacher always gave me a lot of compliments on that. And the German too. Also, my pronunciation was excellent because I could imitate, sprechen Sie Deutsch? It's very easy. Like I sprechen Sie Deutsch. They didn't want to speak German. They wanted to they didn't really want to do it. They were lazy. Chameleon, able to immerse myself in other cultures. That's cool. I have a little bit of that. I have a problem sometimes. It embarrasses my wife. I'll be talking to people like black guys, and I start getting a little bit of the soul in me, man. It starts coming out, and sometimes my daughter gets embarrassed with my wife because, like, Paul, I'm like, what? And they're smiling as they're talking to me. I'm like, what? I am just talking to them in a way that they find this is I feel like one of their people. I don't think there's nothing actually wrong with it, though it can seem to other people when they see you take on a different almost persona, it can be disturbing, right? When you're suddenly you're acting like a Persian guy or whatever, it's like you're able to just culturally become something else. That can spook out people who don't get that. It's like I said, I wish I could have languages too, because then I could, if I knew Spanish, I could fool. Or I don't know if I could probably get close to, they wouldn't instantly pick me out as a total gringo, Even when I worked with Spanish guys, they liked me. I never had problems with people of other cultures, really. Though I grew up racist. I grew up racist. I wasn't particularly racist, but I grew up in, my family. My grandmother was pretty racist. And it's just the way it was. And the world I lived in was racist. I was going to make a cartoon with my brother called Growing Up Racist. Just honestly talk about all the racist stuff that happened growing up. And it wasn't terrible, but it was kind of funny sometimes. And that I think that looking back and kind of poking fun of it can be fun and also instructive. Because I don't believe in racism because Christianity is against it. And it's just not a good thing for the world. For racism to be the leading thought, and it's not a good thing at all. But what was I going to say? There was one example of the racist things that happened growing up that was funny. Which one was I going to use? Let me have a sip of water. My mouth's all dry. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh. There were all these pretty Indian girls in my high school. Very beautiful. Indian, Pakistani, not sure which, but, Southeast Asian. They were gorgeous. I mean, just beautiful. They dressed lovely. Hair, makeup, jewelry. Because they're all Brahmins. It's like they're wealthy. I had a lot of Patels and, but no one in 1990 would ever date any one of those girls. Neither me nor none of my friends, even though I thought they were pretty hot stuff because they were Indian. And they were thinking, oh, gross. What? Ugh. That was their attitude. It was gross. I didn't think so personally, but that's socially what people would just do. They'd grill you for it. It's because it was racist. That's what it was. It was racist. It's now in the same school, I know my nephew dated one of those, an Indian girl, so I guess it must have socially stopped being that way. Because it became less and less racist. We had black kids at school. We didn't hate them. We didn't mistreat them. They were kind of cool. They were mostly adopted because it was a white place. And all, it was just fine. But I grew up in a racist world, and a lot of racist things happened. Though I wasn't particularly racist, I laughed at a lot of racist jokes. I remember we laughed our head off at, what do you get when you cross a Mexican with an Arab? It was oil of Olay, and that's we were 12. We died laughing because that's a pretty good punchline. Oil of Olay. Come on, ridiculous and funny because it's not hateful. It's just sort of that product. Okay. But to us, it was just hilarious because it was a Spanish word and the Arabs have oil. Just stereotypes colliding into a funny bit. It's because the surprise is the answer, and that's why we laughed. I don't know why it was so funny either, because, like I said, was there anything particularly gut-busting about it? I don't know. We thought it was funny. Because we didn't hate people, but we noticed the differences. And, and then the temptation was to joke about them. I teach my kids to respect people of other cultures and religions, but without being too, don't be overly differential and just treat all the people the same, until they teach you to do otherwise, So people teach you that they don't respect, and they're not worthy of respect. Okay. Truce breakers, they can't come to an agreement, can't trust them, people who can't be trusted. False accusers. Do we need to mention, a good example? That'd be a lot of that Me Too stuff. Some of it was real. Some of it's not. Some and I don't want to just point out famous examples. Just, we have a lot of that. We do have a lot of false accusation. Yeah, even the guy we even had our president being accused of things that was probably not true. He was being persecuted for law. I'm not a big fan of him, though I voted for him because I was hoping he'd follow through on the promise of peace. I wish I hadn't, and I wish I just never vote again, honestly, the way I feel. Or I'll just go back to voting for people like, I would vote for Ron Paul again, but he'll never run again. He's too old. But I'd vote for, if they come up with a decent libertarian, but they keep coming up with awful ones. And I'd like to vote for Jill Stein because she's very solid on peace, but she's very climate alarmist, and I think climate alarmism is dangerous. It's as dangerous as anything that the industry might be doing to the climate. Because if we're doing something to the climate, like what we do to fix that could compound the problem. We got to be very careful about fixing things, changing things, adding things to the world, and messing around with the creation. We could find ourselves all dead. Or most of us, it's like the world isn't going to all be dead again. But, 1,000 years ago, they had a little something called the Black Death, where I think a quarter of the world's population died. False accusers, I think it was a quarter. False accusers, incontinent, can't control themselves. We think of that as uncontrollable bladder, but that's not what it's talking about, obviously. Sometimes I tell you what, my bladder is not what it used to be. It sucks. There are times when I can't get my pants off quick enough. Sorry. That's slightly profane, but the Lord understands. It's sometimes incontinence is that, but it's often something else. People can't control themselves. Oh, you mean like uncontrollable masturbation because of all the pornography that's so accessible all the time? We need to learn to control ourselves, fellas. You can't be a slave to those things. That's why I despised cigarette smoking and I quit it. Because it's one of those things where it's like, it could be a matter of conscience. Like some guy likes to come have a cigar once a month. There's no commandments against it. And while I don't, it's like, I don't know. And it's a matter of someone's conscience. Just like I said, a small amount. If someone thinks that, having a New Year's toast every year is the only alcohol they drink, or it's just at communion. I certainly don't consider that a sin. And maybe though for someone else it is a sin, and they shouldn't do it. That's where conscience plays off. It's like we shouldn't judge our brothers because it's like if it's a sin to me, I should definitely not do it, and I don't need to judge my brother unless I see him being drunk, because drunkenness I know to be a sin, and that's the difference. It's like when a brother is abusing their conscience, we can sometimes detect that, and we can help them by rebuking them and say, brother, that's not, and they need to recognize that. Because if we don't recognize that, how can we ever help ourselves? How are we ever going to get the beam out of our eye if we don't recognize that we got one? It's like, it's a problem. Acknowledge the problem. Isn't that the first step of like AA? I think it was like, acknowledge you have a problem, because it's biblically based. I've never really looked. I have their book somewhere. I should read it just to know, because I know a lot of people go through the AA thing. And it's not Christianity, but false accusers, we did that. Incontinent, fierce. We delight in fierceness. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I asked my dad, why do boxers wear gloves? And he's like, because we're not barbarians. Now, truth be told, gloves actually do something to a fight that makes it more likely that you're going to get your head traumatized, because with gloves on, you're more willing to punch someone in the head. If you've ever punched a head, which I haven't done, but I've had my head punched, and though it hurt my nose when he hit me from behind like that, I bet his hand smarted too, because the hand's full of small bones and stuff, and the head is a big, heavy thing. And when someone takes a swing at you, you lean into it and let them hit the top of your head. They're going to hurt their hands, and then they're going to have trouble hitting. I've done submission grappling. I teach wrestling. I do like the martial arts, but I've never used them as an adult in wrath or in the street. Only in the appropriate venue, because I think it's good to carry a sword, but be restrained and not use it. People don't look at me like a victim. I'm able to step in and provide, in I don't need to fear helping the Good Samaritan, because I'm not going to get waylaid, not the Good Samaritan, the guy on the side of the road, because I'm going to present strength that will say, don't victimize. Yeah, right. You're right. Punching people's faces is not that. I don't want to start teaching fighting, but that's not the strategy. That's not a good strategy. Knock the wind out of them. That double them over. Sorry. All right. Yeah. No, it's no, it's not. It's not good. You cut your fist up and it hurts. But anyways, people love it. They love MMA. I don't watch MMA. I don't hate it per se. I don't like. I think hitting. Yeah, of course. In the past, you were young. It's like I know they're. I don't like. I do submission grappling. There's no striking. I don't like. The Bible says not a striker, because strikers. I'll tell you what. The bad thing about strikers strike back and they get hit in the head, and those blows to the head, just like from football, the concussions they're discovering. Even the ones that aren't concussions, every little blow is doing damage to your brain that will down the road potentially. And the more we played football, I played football too, or soccer's even worse with the heading of the ball. Even though you don't get a concussion, you don't realize that the guys are dropping dead who are too young and stuff, especially the pros. So my kids, I didn't let them play football. Even though I love football, made me, I overcame my bullies through football. And, it was a huge thing to me. For me, it was different. I was coming up being the kid getting picked on, and then I joined football to get tough. And I grew up, too. That also happened. Because the guy who picked on me didn't grow he was smaller than me when we were kids. It wasn't the only one. He had friends. That was a problem. But anyways, people love this fierceness. They love bloody movies. They love horror movies. These things, violence. I've confessed, I love violence to a certain degree. And I don't know if all violence is terrible. The Lord, there's a violence associated with him. The thunder and the smoke coming out of his nostrils because of his power, like the power of the universe, the blast of the sun. Like the twisting vortex of a black hole. There's powerful things, and they're kind of amazing. Like when we see some, when you look at I behold your heavens, the works of your fingers, it's awe-inspiring. When you're in football, and you have to hit the weight room, so you change big, right? Since middle school, weight room, right? Yeah. No, I started football earlier. I started like in 4th grade, because that's when I got picked. I got jumped by 6th graders. I decided I was too weak, and people saw me as weak, so I told my dad I wanted to join football. I was like, I want to go play football. I was about 10 years old. And so I joined football, and it turned out I had a knack for it right away. They could see I could hit. My family were known for hitting. My dad and my brother and me, and even my brother and son. And my son was he medal. And they went on to, my kids wrestle, and they do cross country, and they do track. I don't like the team sports very much because my kids go to a small school and it's all political. And all these. Well, and also the basketball team, they have an amazing basketball team with a kid who can dunk the ball, a white kid who can dunk the ball. It's like, and this kind of stuff. I think they took 2nd in state last year. So there's no, I like wrestling because it's more about individual's performance and also track and field and those things. Because it's more like, because Christianity is often, Paul says, I fight, we race. That's how it is. It's like a race. It's a fight. We are individuals. We are together, but we rely on each other to some degree, and there's a community thing to some degree, and we all need it. No man is an island to himself. You can't really live that way. It's not healthy. It's not good for man to be alone, is what the Lord says. It's not good. Man should not be alone. That's why God made woman, and then that's the first stage. It's like, it doesn't have to be a woman. We can find solace other ways, Anyways. False accusing kindness, fears, despisers of those that are good. Boy, they don't like good, do they? They hate good these days. So we see here, even though we're like an hour and 20 into this, we have to go to a certain point, though, because it's not a convenient place to stop right here. False accusing kindness, fears, despisers of those that are good. No, I think we will stop right there at despisers of those that are good, because I want to say a lot that these particular terms: high-minded, important, heady. Can't take that in 5 seconds. Traitors, that's easy. Well, especially this silly women thing. I want to spoil it a little bit. Not whatever, it's spoil. It is like spoiling it because I want to say it ahead of time. I just like it because I don't think he's actually talking about women. He's insulting these men by calling them silly women. So when I read it next time, I want everyone to keep that in mind. Paul is not talking about women. He's obviously insulting women by calling men women, but that's we have insulted each other by calling each other girls since time immemorial. And for a man to be called a girl or a woman is an insult. And let me ask you this, ladies. When we call you, if someone called you man-like, would you find that complimentary? No. No woman wants to be said, you remind me of a man. Okay? So it works both ways. Now, I'm not a big fan of insults myself, but he's being general. Yeah, and it's saying there's something feminine about being led away with diverse lust. The masculine must remain loyal. Whatever. And I'm not saying that's indicative of women or whatever. I'm just saying, like, for a man to become like that. And also remember, the church is likened to a woman, the 10 virgins, right? Lead captive silly women. I think of like the 10 virgins and stuff like that. Anyways, and even if he was talking about women specifically being led astray, it still would be sort of symbolically related to that, because of course they are women being led astray. All right, we'll pick up at verse 4 tomorrow. Like I said, this is a very dense portion of the scriptures, so it's going to take some time to get through it. And I never mind. I love taking time in the Word because it is the light of our life. And, people who don't know the Word don't understand. It always disappointed me. So many people who are critical of the Bible have never read it and only have canned criticisms and aren't really reading it, because there's so much more to it than just what I hear them talking about. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again tomorrow about the same time, I think. Wasn't quite ready. Until then, remember, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
And then if any man shall say to you, lo, here is Christ, or lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christ and false prophets shall arise, and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the chosen.
But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things.
But in those days, after that affliction, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his chosen from the four winds, from the uttermost